My feelings about white nationalism. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I feel like I need to make a relatively serious and informative video. If you like me when I'm funny, watch a different video. If you like me when I'm insightful, pay close attention. You see, white nationalism is starting to be pushed to the forefront of conversation, and that is kind of bugging me. So I figured I should say why, as I have been actively warning people about this for years. A lot of people on the left would argue that white nationalism has always existed and has never left us, and that it is responsible for the rise of Trump. They think of Trump's win purely in terms of racism from Trump voters, and most of these leftists who say such things say these things confidently without actually knowing any Trump voters. The leftists who think like this don't care that Obama was elected twice, and that many of the people who voted for Trump voted for Obama each time. These leftists believe that people can always still be bigoted, even if they do anything and everything to outwardly provide evidence that they are not bigots. To the social justice warrior left, you will be cast aside as a bigot unless you kowtow to whatever tribalistic whim that the group veers towards on any given day. One day it's racist to care about somebody's opinion simply because of their skin color. The next day, you have to always agree with black people. It is impossible to ever come anywhere near an evolved level of being unprejudiced to the social justice left, because the rules change almost every day. Because of this cultural obligation to follow the mad and unpredictable herd or face banishment and attacks from the very mob a person once was a member of, the social justice warrior left cannot fathom that somebody would willingly abandon the herd without knowingly embracing diametrically opposing viewpoints. Social justice warriors feel that either you are with them or against them, as their collective psychology is so uniform and their numbers are so vast that they cannot fathom true mental individualism. They can, however, imagine the social makeup of potential warring tribes, and like some odd internet meme rule that I cannot remember the name of, if somebody can imagine the existence of a certain group of people, chances are that you can find that group of people. It seems as if, for that reason alone, the white nationalistic movement could be born. People imagine that there must be a tribalistic home for them to be proud of being white together, after repeatedly feeling attacked within the social justice crowd for their skin color, and therefore, the white national movement formed as a haven not just for full-blown racists, but also for scared white social refugees who feel they cannot win with their prior friend circles. The new white nationalists are a group of people who were very fringy prior to Trump actually winning this election. However, they are beginning to grow in numbers in terms of people who actually identify this way, and I have even talked to a few of them anonymously over the internet. I think that what people have to keep in mind is that the vast majority of people want a tribalistic label to associate with, and they want leaders to look up to. So when people feel they no longer fit in with their herd, that their herd is being hostile to them as individuals, or that their herd is collectively headed towards running off a cliff, well, most people are only really going to separate from the social justice warrior tribe when they have a new tribe to attach themselves to. And white nationalism has been quietly preparing itself to be a giant clubhouse that will open its doors, apparently for years, allowing anybody willing to enter. I don't even think they'd turn away a black person, just so long as that black person favored segregation and maintaining the purity of the white race. And from what I understand, some of the white nationalist guys actually like certain Asian ethnicities. Now, I have basically mocked Richard Spencer in past videos of mine for being wacky, which I almost regret now, not because I have any strong appreciation of him, but because I underestimated how well his words and ideas might hold traction once given proper exposure, and I more than underestimated how willing his supposed media opponents would be to give him that exposure. As many contemporary media critics have noticed, the term racist has basically lost all meaning with its rampant overuse, but people who actually get paid to be quote-unquote journalists full-time seem almost unanimously to not have gotten this memo. Major publication after major publication has given free publicity to the almost infinitesimally small movement of white nationalism with the seeming hope that these groups would be intimidated and squashed with opposition once they were exposed to the masses. But non-ironically, that exposure has only powered the movement to recruit new members, and white nationalists like Richard Spencer would probably be the first to tell you that. Richard Spencer is not a Milo Yiannopoulos by any stretch of the imagination. He is not all that theatrical, and if he isn't a true believer, he's a really good actor. Milo never even pretends to have a whole lot of integrity, and that's part of his charm. Milo will say basically whatever to keep his audiences entertained and convinced that he is witty, and then maybe he'll throw a dash of propaganda into his lectures and call it a night. Richard Spencer sounds from his interviews like he really means it, and like he has a plan. Richard Spencer can give a hopeless young white person the impression that he is amassing a growing pool of followers that will become a safe new herd for these young white Americans who are feeling that they are very deliberately being forgotten about like yesterday's tweets, or even being demonized like last year's subreddits. Unlike Milo, Richard Spencer and his ilk don't just take the piss out of the American left and current feminism, but seem to have well-formulated arguments that unfortunately I have yet to really sit down and properly get into. Again, I somewhat regret that. From the people I talk to or have seen interviewed that are interested in the white nationalist movement, I can try to piece together what they are thinking. It's something that has come up every so often in American culture over the past 30 years or so, which is this idea that white people either are the true oppressed people because culture and institutions have somewhat demonized them as the majority, which is often true, but maybe more so. White nationalists think that white people will eventually become the minority and continue to be demonized exponentially based on historic precedent. Hopefully that part is untrue, but to avoid that future, racial minorities are going to have to begin examining their own biases instead of repeating the lie that only white people can be racist. Stop it. Truthfully, I don't think that all that many white people were worried about their future as a non-majority until fanatically racist racial minorities were all over social media showing their true colors and proclaiming loudly how much they hated white people. And now these scared white people are organized and growing in numbers. Did these people get Trump elected? Absolutely not. They were a very small minority of voters. However, the white nationalists are riding the Trump train gleefully, and according to Ben Shapiro, they'll openly tell you that. They are using the momentum of the rejection of leftist identity politics to form white-centric identity politics of their own. And people are, in fact, hopping on board. Perhaps more and more every day. So why? Why is this movement gaining traction? As I said before, this is absolutely a reactionary movement, and it is not a simple white lash bullshit like you hear from people, in terms of white people feeling they have lost the nation as a result of being angry about the Obama administration. That's what leftists say. This is not what's going on. More so, for whatever reason, it became completely socially acceptable in person-to-person, academia, and other social media culture to flagrantly demonize white people. That's what the response is. It's not about Obama. Now, I know this is the part of my video where many racial minorities often become angered by white people complaining about any form of discrimination white people ever suffer. This is the part of my video where white social justice warriors scoff at and mock other white people for whining about their supposedly insignificant problems, as if the discrimination these white people have ever faced so often since Black Lives Matter really kicked off couldn't possibly matter. And as if these white social justice warriors have never been discriminated against themselves for being white. It is an astounding betrayal of intellectual and emotional honesty from these white SJWs to be so callous to other white people who have shared the past 4 years with them. Knowing that checking one's privilege is paramount to the experience of being an SJW, it is undeniable that every white SJW has suffered discrimination and shaming for their skin color themselves. Each and every white social justice warrior has been told that their feelings are invalid because they are white, and that they have no right to an opinion about race relation or even politics in general, at least once or twice. And yet, they continue to wish that same treatment on others. It is as if white social justice warriors are telling other white people that although they themselves have repeatedly been mentally flogged for being white, they learned to actually like their beatings and thank their captors for it. And now they are demanding that other white people learn to like it too. They want other white people to like it so much that they'll pretend their beatings never happen, to enjoy their punishment so much that they can convince other white people to try it out, with the promise that it doesn't hurt at all, even though it is plain to see that these people are suffering from their emotional beatings. And everybody has already tried the white guilt whippings by now anyway. And clearly, since Trump was elected, people are tired of it. Now, I am certainly not saying I am some big victim myself, and I like to think that helps me stay relatively unbiased when examining these things. But I can certainly tell you about some abuse that I've suffered as an individual from social justice warriors, just for you to keep in mind. I'm not saying this stuff has deeply hurt me as an individual necessarily, because I have a pretty thick skin, but ask yourself how these things would feel if you experienced them. The first bad encounter I had with white-hating, racist, social justice warrior hate mobs was non-ironically when I posted publicly on Facebook that I don't believe in the fake sociological definition of racism that claims that all racism has to be tied to systems of power. Or basically, it doesn't count. If you've gotten this far in the video, you know that definition is bullshit. But this was at least 3 years ago and people were just starting to feel like they were quote-unquote woke. So they assume that I must not understand the hidden sociological truths that they did, and they felt compelled to shame me for believing the white man's dictionary should be a source of word definitions. One light-skinned Latino guy freaked the fuck out and posted all over my Facebook timeline that I had clearly never taken a sociology class, which was untrue because I had taken 2 or 3 when I attended university in the early 2000s, and my sociology classes were semi-decent and didn't try to brainwash us with lies about dictionaries not being trustworthy. I defended my position, and he could not back up his claims, of course, because there was no justification for saying that only white people can be racist, and it made him completely outraged that I was able to use logic, data, and examples in the debate. It infuriated him to the point of relentless insults about my intelligence, and eventually, of course, that I must be a horrible racist to have these opinions. After a bit of that, I decided to tell him that I'm guessing that he, as a light-skinned Latino, sounded like he was probably a racist to me. I didn't mean that he was racist against white people, which he clearly was too, but rather, he was so obsessed with harping on this ultimately inconsequential semantic detail that it painted him to be overcompensating for something, which led me to believe that he was afraid of his own racial prejudices, and therefore he was desperately grasping onto the belief that he cannot possibly be racist because he is slightly non-white, rather than confronting his own biases like a mature person would. He didn't like me saying that much, and so he screen captured a slightly inflammatory, sarcastic comment of mine completely out of context to put on his timeline, and then tagged seemingly every non-white person he could from his Facebook friend list to come dogpile me, saying that I was a horrible racist. And since this was at least 3 years ago, I did literally have at least 15 people ganging up on me and calling me names. I might have even been threatened, all for winning an argument, and ultimately being clearly the less racially prejudiced individual in the conversation. Now, again, I'm a grown-up, and I'm over that one instance, but I don't necessarily expect the same from every white person who has suffered such social media abuse. And trust me, there are many people who have suffered from similar social media abuse, or abuse much worse than that. And just in case you think I am cherry-picking, and that was just some random encounter with one bad apple, here's a quick list of other ways that I have been attacked over the past few years for being white. One time, a light-skinned woman who seemed to be mixed, Asian, white, called me out, online, for using the term non-white, when instead, according to her, I should have supposedly been using the term person of color. That made me ignorant in her eyes. Once, I was actually making out with a Mexican guy for over a half an hour, and when I compared a certain stereotype about Mexicans that we both exhibited to an identical stereotype shared by my Northern European lineage, he said that I sounded racist and that he no longer wanted to go home with me. all for saying our heritages shared something in common. I guess even bringing up that we have something in common counted as a mid-makeout microaggression to him. Another time, I got into an argument with a black guy I knew because I said I wanted to watch the Hollywood Ghost in the Shell movie when I first heard it was coming out, even though the actress is not Asian, because it is my favorite series of all time, and Scarlett Johansson's character's body is entirely synthetic anyway, so she could be blue-skinned in terms of plot accuracy. He said that I was racially insensitive for not caring about Hollywood whitewashing, and that it was my white privilege that makes me want to see this film at all, even though he confessed that he has never even seen the movies or shows himself, so he didn't even have the foggiest idea what he was talking about. That didn't stop him from carrying out a long public argument about this, and he never backed down even after he basically admitted that he didn't know what he was talking about. He said he didn't care. Whitewashing was still whitewashing, according to him, and my opinions were invalid as a white person. The same guy once flipped the fuck out on me because I said that the humor of a rather tasteless comic about the death of Sandra Bland was too soon. And I guess that was not a sufficiently outraged enough response for him, and so he began berating me for posting a comment on his timeline at all. And he eventually told me, "Shut your white ass up." All for agreeing with him that the comic was in poor taste. One black former friend of mine began a manic private message onslaught on Facebook towards me because I made a long post analyzing my feelings about a specific Black Lives Matter protest where they invaded brunch restaurants and started listing dead black people shot by cops randomly one Sunday afternoon. I wasn't even entirely critical of the protest, but he didn't even read my post at all and admitted so right off the bat. Instead, he just berated me for, again, having an opinion at all as a non-black person. He then started demanding that I attend protests if I were to have an opinion, and when I said I didn't really want to do that, he got aggressive and eventually threatened to physically assault me. These are just a few examples of racial discrimination I have experienced over the past 4 years as a white person, but I could go on for literally another hour or so. So, knowing that all of these things happened to me as a 34-year-old gay man who had these interactions almost entirely with other queer people in relatively physically safe social circles, knowing that things were this bad for me, and that I think I had it relatively decently, why don't you think about something else? What would it be like for a straight white male in a more rough neighborhood over the past 4 years? What would it be like for an 18-year-old white kid in Milwaukee, for example, who has received this type of irrational and relentless, racially motivated hatred over the past 4 years? His entire high school career. Not just on the internet, but maybe even in person at his school. What would it be like? If he complained about this racist abuse he suffered as a white kid, what do you think he was told? Was he told, "Wow, that's fucked up, we should do something about that"? Or was he told to check his privilege? I'm going to leave this question to you. What if the kid got beat up? What if he got beat up repeatedly? What if almost every other white kid he knows got beat up at least once, simply for being white? High school sucks, and I was attacked in school for being white in the 90s. I can only imagine what it's like now. So, now that Trump has won and people continue to just call people racist for supporting him, but some of these younger white people or even older people were glad he won for various reasons, maybe not even related to identity politics at all, and there are beatings of Trump supporters and the footage finds its way all over YouTube, how do you think these people feel? Do they think to themselves that they should just continue to just take the racial abuse that they deserve for being born white? Or do you think that they want to start organizing to actively fight back and protect their white tribe? I am obviously not a white nationalist, and I think this tribalism from both sides is disgusting, which deep down is precisely why I never really associated myself with Black Lives Matter, even when I thought I supported the movement. I never changed my profile photo to anything related, and I never attended a rally. Deep down, I saw this coming. You see, The new white nationalist movement is absolutely not something that's been with us all throughout America. That's like saying a mountain slide was always with us because the land that slid down the mountain was always there. The people who are attracted to the white nationalist movement are desperate, and they are scared. And if you cannot understand why they are scared, then either you're stupid, you're a liar, or you are exactly part of the problem. The white nationalist movement is a product of the left, and the white nationalist leaders absolutely know that. They know that racial minorities, and especially many black Americans, like the unconditional supporters of Black Lives Matter, and the people who are beating people up in Milwaukee and Charlotte, they're driving people into a state of fear that pulls them into the white nationalist movement. The leaders of the white nationalist movement aren't just benefiting from that, they are banking on it. So until you understand that it takes two to tango, this movement will continue to get stronger. The choice is yours about what to do, but being neutral in times of growing tension might be something you should consider after all. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.